Hi everyone, my name is Kornel Wolak.
And I'm Clelia Scala. Kornel and I teach at the Dance School of Drama and Music in Kingston, Ontario at Queen's University.
Clelia and I, we met at work about a year and a half ago. And soon after that, we decided that we would like to launch a project together that would incorporate shadow puppetry with live music. And so we did. We combined Clelia's shadow puppetry making students and clarinet students, and we created a project called
Shadows and Winds. It was based on a Greek myth, and it was a love story, and the couple transformed into birds and flew away at the end.
So that was a very pretty, and it was set to a very beautiful music by Ennio Morricone. So it was a very, very touching story. And today we would like to tell you a little bit more about how can you tell a story using shadow puppets and or live music if you are musically inclined.
Absolutely. So today what we're going to do is we're going to make simple shadow puppet theater, a 3-part shadow puppet, and then from there you will have the tools you need to go on and create beautiful stories yourself.
But before we do that and take you on that journey, I would like to ask Clelia a few questions about shadow puppetry.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us a little bit about what sort of stories can shadow puppets tell?
It's a great question. Shadow puppets can really tell any story, but I think a great place to start with shadow puppetry is to come up with a simple story. Shadow puppets tend to work best when you have very clean lines, and if you're doing a wordless story, you definitely want something that's easy to follow visually. So I would think, for example, a good story would be, say, have a shipwreck, a story of a shipwreck, a pirate ship that sets sail, crosses the ocean, encounters some sort of beast maybe, and then lands on a desert island and finds treasure. That's actually kind of a complicated story, but a lot of visually interesting stuff happens in it, and in that kind of story you could play with lines and textures. Or you could, rather than create your own story, you could play with a story you know and love. For example, one of your favorite fairy tales, or a nursery rhyme from when you were really little. They work really well. Today, we're going to make shadow puppet theaters, we're going to make 3-part puppets, and we're going to talk a bit about scenery. What's great about shadow puppetry is you can create beautiful stories just from using stuff that you probably already have around your house. So right now I'm going to show you what you need. What I'm going to ask you to do after I go through this list is pause, because we're going to post a list of everything you need today, and go get those supplies, and then we're going to all sit down and work together. So today, what you need, absolutely, is for the shadow puppet screen, you need a cardboard box. You also need something flat and white you can put on it, or somewhat transparent, so like an old pillowcase that your parents might have in the linen closet. Some parchment paper would work very well, or some tissue paper used for when you're wrapping gifts. They will work very well as shadow puppet screens. And if you don't have those items, that's okay, because you know you've already been doing shadow puppets, I bet. Every time you hold your hand up against your wall and make a duck or a rabbit or any of those things that cast a shadow against your wall, you're already doing shadow puppetry. So the screen is not essential. You can just use your flashlight and a wall if you want. But the shadow puppets, what you need is you need paper. So could you please pass me that cardboard? Thank you, Kornel.
How many pieces would you like?
Just one is good, for example. So here's what you need to make the shadow puppets. You need paper. There are many options. You can use plain old cardboard. You can use cardstock. These colors, because you can't see through these papers, they're not going to show through on your screen. If these were see-through, say like a lighting gel, you would see them on your screen, the colors on your screen. But we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So these colors, so you need cardboard. I recommend using something like an old cereal box, or this is a 4-cheese frozen pizza box. That is a good consistency for shadow puppets. Other things you absolutely need today is a pencil to draw your puppet with, scissors to cut your puppet out with. You're going to need some wire, some thin wire. This is to make your joints. The other thing you could use for your joints are brads, which your parents probably know what they are. They're little metal clips that you can bend out like a butterfly. I should not have done that. Okay. That can be edited out, right?
Sure.
Okay, so what you need, absolutely, are this wire for your joints, a pencil to draw your puppet with, scissors, something to make your puppet on, and you also need something to hold your puppet with, and that would be a thicker wire, and you could use, say, a clothes hanger if you don't have any wire like this kicking around, or the insides of an old umbrella, something like that. You probably have something in your house that will work. The other thing you need is tape. I'm using gaff tape here. A lot of you probably won't have gaff tape kicking around your house, but you will have masking tape, and that will work just as well. And then something like a piece of dowel. Something like this. Now, if you don't have dowel around the house, that's absolutely fine. You might have some old chopsticks, a pencil would work, anything. All you want is something to connect wire to, that you then connect to your puppet to, and you're in business. And then the fun thing you want for your puppet is little ornamental things. I like using things like lace or fancy papers, because the light, or lighting gels, as I showed you earlier, because the light shines through them in a really interesting way and can add complexity and texture to your puppets.
And could you tell us what is this branch with beautiful flowers for?
This branch, I just thought it would be interesting to try out with some shadows, so we'll see how it works.
In case we wanted to tell a story from a shadow puppet guy.
Yeah, it's actually from a stop motion animation film I made. It's just a little, but I just thought the light might shine through it nicely, because if you can see, some of the paper is translucent.
Okay. And what are these for, Claire? Could you tell us?
Those?
Yes.
These are really long Q-tips.
I can tell.
Yes.
Do shadow puppets have ears that they clean with?
That is an excellent question. No, they do not. Well, they could. Actually, that would make a really fun shadow puppet show. You're welcome to take that idea. No, I just wanted, this is not essential, but if I'm going to use a shadow puppet a lot of times, I like to attach a stick to the back. You can't really see it. I like to attach sticks to the back to give them extra support. It's kind of like the skeleton of the shadow puppet. It holds the shadow puppet up. So if they're getting a lot of wear, it's nice to give them some extra support.
All right. What else do we have here that we should mention?
A little flashlight. Flashlight is fun to play with the shadow puppets if you're doing them on your bedroom wall or on a screen. Flashlight is indispensable. And that's about a ruler.
And I've seen also this one. I haven't seen this one before.
Oh, so I use these often to cut shadow puppets, an X-Acto knife. Now, don't use these unless you have your parent helping you, because you can really cut yourself badly. They're very sharp. Parents, what is good to know about these is you can actually sharpen them to get them. Extend the use of them.
And are these tools also for shadow puppet making, or for making a frame, or what are these?
So I also have pliers here. So pliers will be really helpful when you're making your joints. You can twist them with your hands, but they help get the joints nice and tight. So I have two kinds of pliers here. I have needle nose, and then I have square head plier. And you'll see how I use both a little differently.
And what is this knife for?
That is just a utility knife. Again, don't use these without your parents. The utility knife is just basically to cut the cardboard. We're going to use it to cut the cardboard for our shadow puppet screen.
I see. And what is in this magic jar?
This magic jar is my #1 favorite product, which is contact cement, which I use constantly for all sorts of things. And it's a low odor because contact cement can be really, really smelly, but this stuff is my favorite.
And what is this pad rather that you are using?
This is a cutting mat. So I've got tons of these kicking around. You know what? You can just pick these up at the dollar store, smaller versions at the dollar store, and they come in little sets with these X-Acto knives. They're great. But it's nice because you can cut on it without worrying about harming your table.
I see. And I see that you have a ruler here as well.
Yes. A good heavy metal ruler is an indispensable tool for an artist because wooden rulers you can cut when you're using utility knives and such.
And as for me and my
What do
tools,
you have there?
well, I do have my clarinet that we are going to be using when the shadow puppet story will be told.
So the first thing we're going to do is make our shadow puppet screens. You need a cardboard box, and you need some parchment paper, tissue paper, fabric, something white. The important thing with the shadow puppet screen is you just want something tight, stretched across a frame. So I've made shadow puppet screens out of old picture frames, mirror frames, and just stretching something like a sheet or a shower liner. Shower liners work brilliantly and you can get them at the dollar store. So this screen, which is quite lovely, it's made of PVC piping and then a really nice material inside. It was designed by Jean-Philippe, who I took a course with, and he's a brilliant puppeteer and puppet maker in the US. Let's start this again. So what you want is an old cardboard box, a ruler to measure. If you have metal, ideal, but if not, that's fine too. And I'm just going to measure 1 inch around. I've actually already cut the hole in this box, but measure 1 inch on either side. Draw it in. You want it nice and even. It's nice to look nice. You can always decorate it after if you want. That can look really pleasing. And then take your ruler so it's nice, straight line. Get your parents to help you with this. Take your utility knife and cut out the square. The rectangle, my apologies. Okay, so then you have this. Next thing you want to do is take something like parchment paper, measure it to fit. Mine's a little bigger, so I'm just going to take off a little piece of the parchment paper. I'm going to do that with scissors, just to be quicker. I'm just going to take off a bit so that it fits the screen perfectly. You don't want sloppy paper hanging over. Aesthetics are very important. Have your parchment paper or whatever kind of covering in your shadow puppet. I'm just going to show you how it works. So you would think you want to have it like this, but you actually want to turn it this way. So that you can press your shadow puppets right up against the screen. So I'm just going to use my flashlight.
It's right here.
Just right down. And show you how it works. So the closer an image is to the screen, the crisper the look is going to be. See? So you want to keep it pressed. The further away, the fuzzier image is going to be.
Look at this, you used some of that gel tape, right?
Yeah, I used some lighting gel in there for a little blue. I think I'm going to layer it to get it darker blue. Okay, so now you have your screens, so we're going to go on to building the puppets. So Kornel, let's make puppets.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to first tell me your favorite animal. Or an animal that you think would be interesting to animate.
I was always fascinated by cats.
Who isn't fascinated by cats?
Yes.
They are very interesting. Okay, so take a piece of the cardboard like you have in front of you,
All right, and
and I'd
start
like you to draw a cat. Just the outline of a cat. So let's go over this just to be clear. You want to draw, we'll
Yes.
do it photos. You want to draw just the basic outline of the animal.
Mhm.
You don't want to complicate it with cross legs or anything that
not
could,
too elaborate.
not too elaborate, something very simple. So here I have a simple line with legs sort of in V's, all four legs are showing, the tail is showing, and then you have the head. This is going to become a three-part puppet.
Nice.
And shadow puppets, as I mentioned earlier, work best when the design is simple and the lines are clean. So for my lion, I want the head to move and the back to move. So I have drawn onto my lion the places where I'm going to have the joints. So let me just circle. This is where a joint is going to be. And this is where a joint is going to be. And then I filled it in with lines to show where I'm going to cut. These are my cutting lines. But this is where the joint is going to be. So the hips are going to move like this, and the head is going to move like this.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
So how is it going to be operated? By two hands, I believe?
It's going to be operated by two hands on with two sticks.
I see.